Hello everyone, buenas tardes, bonjour à tous, привет, ahlan wa sahlan, buongiorno a tutti. So today I thought I'd do a little bit of a different video to the usual language videos, in a sense that the videos have been more tailored to tips and how I learn languages, looking at different techniques, resources, and kind of pitfalls for people who learn languages, etc. And speaking in other languages. I think this is the first video I've done full in English. But what I wanted to do today is give an example of videos that I have used to learn languages, which have been based on kind of a theory called comprehensible input. So essentially finding topics that you enjoy in your own native language and listening to them in the target language that you're trying to learn, with a content that is kind of 70-80% understandable, but with some things that you don't understand. This allows your brain to assimilate the language without being too difficult, but also giving you room to learn new words and new phrases without being overwhelmingly difficult, so you completely switch off. So today I just thought I'd do a little bit of an example like that in English, speaking about a topic that for me is quite interesting, and I think for a lot of people who learn languages, it's very intertwined with this topic. So I think it's always interesting for people who learn English. So I'm going to touch on the current state of British politics, which, yeah, for anyone who follows that, it's very fast changing, and it could be very useful for people learning English and who look at everything that's happening and they might not understand sort of where the parties come from, where the current situation has stemmed from, and therefore want to get a bit of context on that. So what I wanted to do first of all is give a bit of context on the two kind of major parties that have traditionally been in power in the country, even though now we kind of more have a three-party system, with the arrival of a new party. But yeah, so the first party we have is the Conservatives. Now, the Conservatives were founded in the 19th century. Traditionally in the 19th century, there was kind of a confrontation between what were called the Conservatives and the Whigs, kind of the old version of the Liberals. They were founded on a basis of protecting the rights of kind of wealthy landowners, right? So they were very much to keep the status quo. They've traditionally been defined with kind of low tax, trying to boost kind of entrepreneurship, but being a little bit less inclined to invest in public services or protect kind of the rights of workers. Which then led to the formation of the second party that we currently have, which is the Labour Party, which was founded on the turn of the 20th century by a man called Keir Hardie. The Labour Party stems essentially from trade unions who were lobbying for the defence of workers' rights, and found that at the time there was a big absence of that, and so the party was founded very much kind of a workers' movement, and first got into government in 1924 with a minority government formed, led by Ramsay MacDonald, which didn't last too long. But essentially over the last kind of 150 years, apart from a brief victory with the Liberals in the early 1900s, we've had a constant shift. And obviously during the World Wars, where we had a wartime cabinet with David Lloyd George, and the Liberals got involved and the Conservatives, and we kind of had a mix of government. But especially since the end of the Second World War, we've kind of had an interchanging of Labour and Conservatives. And then we had a coalition government after 2010. But if we just kind of pause at 1997, so 1997, Tony Blair wins a landslide majority for Labour. And this was kind of what was called the New Labour Project. So we'd had obviously dominance of Margaret Thatcher in the 1970s, and then we moved into, which was kind of all around the world, right? You look at Ronald Reagan in the US, there was a big kind of emphasis on liberal politics, liberal economics. And what happened was Labour as a movement decided that if they were going to win a general election, they needed to get a little bit further away from the left and move towards the centre. So the New Labour Project, kind of Tony Blair, was founded upon this kind of more modern form of left-wing politics, so less kind of radical, less kind of idealistic, and a little bit more pragmatic in what they were wanting to achieve. So they won a landslide majority, and Labour governed this country until 2010. There was a lot of infighting between Tony Blair and Gordon Brown towards the end of his tenure, and eventually David Cameron became Prime Minister in 2010 with a coalition government with the Liberal Democrats led by Nick Clegg. And the Conservatives then led the UK all through that period. We had a host of prime ministers. The whole after Brexit in 2016, there was a massive. There was a few years where Parliament was essentially just kind of governed by that one issue, and then we had we had a lot of paralysis. Let's put it that way. And then in 2024, so last year, there was a general election, and Labour won a landslide majority with Keir Starmer, who is currently the Prime Minister. But the situation's changed a little bit in the sense that now we have a party called Reform, which is led by Nigel Farage, which could be classed as kind of a replacement of the old-fashioned Conservative Party. This is my kind of opinion. I think the Labour Party and the Conservative Party are very much fused into one now. I think that there isn't much to distinguish the two. Reform was originally the kind of Brexit party. So it was a party that was defined by wanting to get Brexit over the line, led by Farage, who was kind of the architect of the Brexit movement, the Leave campaign. And so now they have transitioned into kind of a more mainstream party and got millions of votes in the election last year. But because of our electoral system, they only got, I think it was 4 seats, perhaps 4 or 5 seats. But in the opinion polls right now, they sit kind of very high. They're the most popular party in terms of support in the majority of the opinion polls. Farage certainly isn't the most popular in terms of leader, but I think, in the next election in 2029, they're going to get a lot of support, and it's going to be very interesting to see if that translates to actual votes, because one thing is being popular when there's no elections on the horizon, and another is getting votes. That's something we see across Europe. We see that with kind of Marine Le Pen in France. She's very popular 3-4 years before an election, but then the election comes around and the media get involved, people's heads get turned, and people decide to vote for a kind of more traditional option, more kind of mainstream political option, let's say. So that's going to be very interesting. A lot of people, you get a very big divide, right? People think that Reform is kind of a far-right party. Some people think they're just a right-wing party. They definitely stand for, low taxes, a very, very kind of firm stance on illegal immigration, wanting to reduce the net migration to the UK. And just kind of an anti-system party, which we see across we've seen that with Trump, we've seen that with a lot of parties across Europe as well, who are going kind of against the traditional system, and that's definitely how they position themselves. People who want to make radical institutional change. Now, again, if this is going to happen, if they do get into power, will they make those changes? Is it all just smoke to try and get votes? We don't know, but Reform are definitely a big part of the political landscape. And I would say in some ways they're even more important at the moment than the Conservatives, who one more bad election could be looking at an existential crisis and possibly a complete disappearance from the political framework. So yeah, I'm thinking of doing a few more videos like this. It's definitely a topic that I'm quite knowledgeable on. I'm not a political expert by any means, but I have studied politics, kind of international relations and these things. So for people looking to learn English, I definitely would be keen on doing more things like this, looking at political phenomena, analysing current kind of political affairs, what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on with Russia, and then linking it back to obviously the main theme of the channel, which is language learning. So yeah, hopefully something a little bit different. Hopefully it's enjoyable, and yeah, I'll see you all in the next video.